Okay, so we're now recording. So I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:39. First order of business is to review the agenda and make any changes or additions. Are there any changes or additions to be made to the agenda? Okay, hearing no changes or additions to the agenda, we'll move on to item 2, which is the which is the approval of the minutes from December 6th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of December 6th as written? Is there a motion to approve the minutes of December 6th?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Great.
Of the 6th.
Thanks. Motion from Emily. Is there a second? You can come off mute if you want to. It's not gonna, I don't think it'll screw things up too much this time.
Okay.
Be fine. Actually, just for the record that they should be able to hear you through that, because
Yeah, it's gonna create an echo, so if you're not talking, just mute it. But if you wanna come off to vote or second something, by all means.
what you can do is if you remain muted on your computer, his computer is hearing you because through that microphone.
Okay.
So we're still waiting for a second on the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, great. Thanks, Suzanne. So we have a second from Suzanne. Is there any other discussion? Hearing no other discussion, we'll vote. And I think my understanding of this has been a little bit wrong in that it doesn't have to be a roll call vote if it's a unanimous. And so we can start with a vote, and if it's a unanimous vote, we don't actually have to do the roll call. If it's not unanimous, then we do have to do a roll call vote. So all those in favor of approving the minutes of December 6th as written, please say aye or signify by raising your hand. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
I wasn't here.
So we have an abstention from Leanne. So we're going to have to go back to a roll call vote on this. So we'll start with Suzanne.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Emily.
Aye.
Leanne.
Abstain.
Abstains. Charlie. Aye. So the motion carries with one abstention. Great. So with that, it takes us into Public Works. First up is Roads and Bridges, grant updates and project updates. Mark, take it away.
So we've reapplied for the Better Back Roads grant for the Hill West project by Charlie Carpenters. I think this is the third time we've applied. We tweaked the numbers a little bit. We tweaked the numbers a little bit, and hopefully this time they'll approve it. So it's all been resubmitted. So that's all set.
Great.
And as far as the other grants, we still have the grant and aid for Black Falls, at the bottom of Black Falls, to do next year. And maybe up on Black Falls, the other watershed grant for the big culvert up there. So we'll see how that one comes along. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Any project updates other than plowing, or you can talk about plowing too.
Pretty much just trying to keep up with the snow. It seems to be working pretty well. We've had a few breakdowns with the trucks, but we've gotten things going again. It's all part of the game. Part of getting everything done. So, but no, Scott's working out well, and Mark, and so I think it's going well. We haven't gotten too many complaints, so I think we're doing a good job.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other project updates as far as roads and bridges go?
Oh, not too many right now. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions or anything else under roads and bridges before we move on? right, not seeing anything. So with that, we will move to buildings and grounds. 98 Main Street, I have no update on anything at this time. You know, no word from the post office or anything still. And then the carried over item here, the renovation committee, I don't believe that they've met again since our last meeting. So I think that the work now is still kind of same update we had last time, working on the revised to scale drawings to try to sketch things out and keep the ball moving there with the architect. Anybody have anything else under buildings and grounds?
Well, there was one more thing about that Better Back Roads grant. The total project is $59,433. So our town share will be $11,886. So we'll have to budget for that amount at budget time.
Okay, 11,886?
Yes, is going to be the town share.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And we will talk about this later, but when you say we'll have to budget that, that's like a soon discussion, because it's already that magical time of year.
Yeah.
Great. All right, well, if there's nothing else under buildings and grounds, not hearing anything, we can move on to Water Commission. Only update here I have is the grant, the forgivable loan grant subsidy that we've applied for. Yeah, the hydrologic study. Mark and I have been back in touch with the guys from the state there, and Mark, I can't remember where that left. Did you set up a call with those guys?
Yeah, I'm meeting with them tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I have a Zoom meeting at 1 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay, great.
I think I've got most of the questions answered that I needed. They sent a form with a bunch of questions on it.
Okay.
There's only a couple of questions. Well, no, I think I got most of them, so we should be good. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll let you know how that turns out. I think this is the last thing we have to do before they approve the funding, so.
Yeah, I think,
Tomorrow.
once we get that in, they just need that, and then the certificate of insurance, which they have a copy of somewhere in that office in a different folder, but we'll resend them that so they have that, so we can get the ball rolling there.
And there was two, the tank inspection, water tank inspection, and the chlorinator at the pump station were two deficiencies, but those have both been repaired. I sent them a copy of the tank inspection, and they were happy with that, so.
Yep.
A picture of the chlorine pump repaired, so.
Good.
That should take care.
Great. Cool. Only other water commission thing we had on here was just the Regan Road pump station project, and we've got ARPA down lower on the agenda here, but I did run this project by the ARPA. What do they call themselves? The ARPA help desk, basically, at VLCT for clarification on use of funds. And they did say that, yes, this project would be eligible under two different criteria. The water system pump part would fall more under the infrastructure. And then the repeater, if we put a repeater up there to help with EMS comms, that part of it would be kind of a separate part of the project, but also eligible for funding. So, so we are good to go as far as the ARPA funds usage is concerned on this one. So I'll get with Aaron as far as kind of what we need to start thinking about as far as execution and tracking. But I believe that we can start to get our ducks in a row on that. Do you know at this point now, Mark? Yeah, go ahead.
Could we approve the Vermont Electric quote, then we could get the ball rolling there? I mean. Yeah,
well, we can, if you want, we could actually just approve the expenditure in total.
Okay.
Just that way.
Vermont Electric, then we can get it on their schedule, if it's approved. then we'll have to get those easements signed too.
Yep.
Those two easements. But if we can get that at least approved for that part of it.
Yep.
You know.
So if we want to move forward with this project using the ARPA funds, I think the total cost we were looking at combined was about $18,000. So a motion would be to approve the expenditure in the amount not to exceed $18,000 towards the project, funds coming from the ARPA account, or the municipally directed ARPA funds.
Yeah.
I would make the motion to direct the adequate amount of ARPA funds to the Regan Road project.
Great. So Emily has moved to approve the expenditure for the Regan Road project from the town's ARPA funds. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Great. Thank you, Leanne. We have a second from Leanne. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no other discussion, we can vote. All those in favor of using the ARPA funds to cover the $18,000 expenditure for the project, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. We have got a unanimous approval.
So, so will you have time to talk to the homeowners about the easements and stuff, Charlie? Or
Yeah,
you said
I've got the material right here, and so I will get to it might be the week after Christmas before I can carve out time to go chat with them, but I'll get all the stuff kind of lined up, and then we can get that handled next week.
I think they might be up for a while. Not
Yeah.
sure.
Yep. So I'll reach out to them. Great. Cool. Yeah, Jim and Ann, Lackner-Grable, those are the landowners.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet.
Good things. Yeah.
Awesome. So we are about 10 minutes ahead of schedule, but if there's no objection, we can pivot to visitors and see if Larry and Anita have anything
Can
for
I
us.
ask the Water Commission
Oh, yeah.
question before we move forward?
Of course, yes.
I just wanted to follow up. Mark, you had said that Scott was taking his water test in December, and I wanted to know if that had happened yet.
We haven't rescheduled it yet. With plowing snow, we aren't sure. I'm gonna look at trying to get it done in January. But we'll try to get it rescheduled again. He's under my license, so there's, sometimes it takes a while to get that exam passed, but we're still fine, with the state.
Is that test offered like the first and third Mondays of the month kind of thing? Or do you have to schedule it on a specific day of your choosing, or like, how's that work?
You have to schedule on a specific day, and it has to be at least a month after you've taken it before. I'll go on their website and see when the next available class is, and
Okay.
try to get it scheduled.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, just to reiterate, as Mark said, we are currently operating under the letter of the law and everything with what our current certifications and licensure requirements are. So, there's no issue there. The one thing we do want to make sure is that, as part of bringing Scott on and the contracting process, we did put language in there about a timeline for him to take and pass the exam. And potentially during that, maybe we were a little ambitious in terms of thinking about timelines, and if he has to wait a month between tests, maybe we were a little ambitious in that, but we do want to make sure that we kind of get that wrapped up so that we don't have an outstanding mismatch between, some employment terms and what's going on.
But I mean, I am training him on the system and everything. And
Yep.
just, have So, yeah.
Yeah, I think functionally and in practice, I don't think there's anything, to be concerned about at all. I think it's just a case of, we want to make
Yeah.
sure that since we do have stuff on paper with an employee, that we're following up on our end of it, and they are too.
Yeah.
Yep, cool. Awesome, so if there's no objection, we'll pivot to visitors. I'd like to welcome back our old friend, Larry Letourneau. It's been a while. He's been in the wilds. I heard he had hair down to his butt, and someone called him a hippie, and he cut it all off. Shaved his head, too, it looks like.
Real quick question about the pump station project on the Regan Road. Is VEC handling the whole thing for $18,000, or am I just behind times here?
VEC is about 11,000, and the rest is Doug Kopass for the electrical. VEC will go halfway up and then put a transformer on a pole, and then from that pole we go another 200 feet underground up to the reservoir. And Doug Kopass gave an estimate to do that part of it, to get it up to the reservoir.
Did we request for quotes from anybody besides Doug?
I did not. It came in fairly reasonable. I mean, yeah. I mean, the price of conduit and stuff right now is
Sky
pretty
high,
high.
yep.
Yeah, yeah,
So he's in it for about $6,000 then.
yeah, right around that. Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
yeah.
Larry does raise an interesting point, though, around, two things. One is just around our purchasing policy. This is kind of tangential to that, but that is something that we're probably going to have to pull back out in the next couple of months just to revisit to make sure that things all line up with federal grant requirements. And that the amounts actually make sense. The other part of it is the process for the expenditure of the ARPA funding for things like this, and whether or not we are going to be required to get multiple bids. I think VEC is not a concern because they are the power supplier here. Like we can't call a different power company and be like, hey, what would you like to do? But there might be a need to source one or two more quotes for the electrical work. I will try to get that information as soon as possible.
I mean, I can actually do that. I mean, I'll see if I can get a hold. Hard part is just finding somebody available.
Yeah.
What is available to do it.
Yeah, and if you want to send an email to like Mike's Electric and somebody else, as long as we can document that we've reached out to them about the project and they have said no, that also fits most needs as far as procurement of stuff goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try.
D&D Electric is another good choice.
D&D, yep. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so if you want to just get the ball rolling on that, Mark, just in case we do need it, it'll at least cover our butt.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'll do that.
Great. Anything else, Larry, from you or your better half?
That's it. I'm so far behind with what's been going on in the town, it doesn't make any difference anyways.
Did Larry just say he wants to be the new dog officer?
No, I did not say that.
Sorry, the Zoom broke up a little
You can
bit.
see me now. Hold my beer while I write you a citation.
There you go. All right. Awesome. Great. All right. Well, if there's nothing else under visitors, we can keep moving through our agenda. The next item up here is ARPA. And so, as I said earlier, I did email around a list to everybody that was kind of just a laundry list dump of all the ideas that have come out of the survey that we put out there. The list is not ranked in any way. It doesn't indicate like how many responses we got for what kind of thing. So it's not like it's a vote. All it is just a dump of all of the ideas condensed down into focal area. So for example, if somebody said PSB renovations and someone said make the clerk's office better in the public service building, like those were combined kinds of things. So feel free to look through that. You will note that there's some things on there that we've discussed, kind of like an example being broadband, where I think based on what we've heard from the CUD that we're probably not going to want to allocate any money to that, given what their funding's like. The Regan Road project is listed there, which we just voted to move forward. There's some other things that we've discussed around, matching funds for some of the TAP grants that we've got, paving the PSB lot. So anyway, take a look through that list at your leisure. We're still not under the gun to get these funds out the door at any time in the immediate future, but it's a good way to kind of screen them and just kind of think for yourselves. And, personally, you can start moving them around and ranking them as to what you think. The one that I will note that is on there is the community co-work space at the MCA. So I did, I believe, forward the proposal from Daniel Kahn regarding the co-work space renovations to the MCA basement. Did everybody get that? I did. Okay. So I think I also sent my response to Dan with the email, which just asked about whether or not they had pursued or looked into any other funding opportunities for that kind of a project. The idea being that if there's potentially other funds that could go towards the project and the ARPA funds could essentially fill like a gap or a town match requirement, it might be a stronger argument for that kind of an expenditure to a local nonprofit. I also did ask just for some more clarity around the 501c3 that he referenced, just to get some more background there. But so far, that's the only kind of real fleshed out proposal we've received from anybody in town other than just the community survey.
What was their request for?
So Dan and some partners floated the idea back at the hearing at the Grange Hall about doing some renovations to the basement of Keaton Hall to create kind of a municipal co-work space. The idea being that it would be a centralized place with high-speed internet, close to other kind of ancillary services in the center. So it could kind of meet a few different needs around workspace, internet access, community engagement, that kind of stuff. So that was Dan's proposal, in a real small nutshell. But he had a nice, well thought out proposal with a budget included. I have not heard back from him yet on my response to that. So,
Thank you.
anybody else have any thoughts, questions, anything to throw out there regarding ARPA at this point? Nope. Emily, I saw you came off mute. I didn't know if that was Penny hitting buttons or if you wanted to jump in.
No, I guess I have more questions about Daniel's proposal, but I will hang on to them until he gets back with us about the questions that you've already floated out there about other possibilities for funding.
Yep.
I guess one of my major questions, and I don't know, I know Suzanne's on here and maybe she can answer this question, but looking at the budget that he proposed, it seems really low to me. I'm wondering if there's going to be it's a very old building. Is there mold remediation that's going to happen? Is there lead paint concerns? Any of those kind of things that we should be considering in the back of our heads as we're thinking about his proposal?
I'm actually, here. So this is the first that I'm hearing about any of this budget or proposal. Obviously I knew about the proposal, but I don't think that they've had an actual, I don't know that they've been in the building with an architect or a contractor to actually assess the space requirements beyond just a general sense of it. I could be wrong, but this is the first time that I'm hearing a proposal with a budget included in it.
Okay.
And
Thanks, Suzanne.
as far as definitely mold and mildew might be a bit of an issue down there. Lead paint is not, but improving insulation, all of those sort of things. I just barely clicked the email, so I haven't dived into it too much. But yeah, so I will be reaching out to get a little more information for sure, and I can bring that back to the board.
Great. Well, yeah, if Daniel does, come back with some follow-up, we can certainly invite him to one of our next meetings to have a discussion around, some more of these questions. But I gotta say, it's nice to see that kind of level of thought and engagement coming in to a request like that, so.
It's definitely an idea that the MPs we want to endorse and like get involved.
Great.
Available, and maybe the ARPA can be a supplementary piece of it if it's necessary.
Yep. Yeah, I think if people think back to kind of that diagram of ARPA funding and other stuff, that sweet spot was kind of, wherever ARPA can leverage other money. And so thinking about where we might have local match requirements for things, if we can use it to fill that gap to leverage other money. I mean, ideally, if we've got, what is it, like 600, I can't even remember now. Say we've got $600,000 in ARPA funds, if we can leverage that into 1.2 million into town, right? That's what we want to do. So that's the idea there. Cool. So if folks want to keep kicking the wheels on things or asking around town or reviewing that list and thinking about stuff, by all means, that would be great, and we'll keep the discussion open. But we're moving ahead with our first ARPA-related project. That's exciting. So next up here is the wastewater and streetscape projects update. So the main update here, there's two updates. So from a functional system design standpoint, when we essentially designed the system and put everything together to figure out like how big does this have to be and what kind of capacity and how much is going to be flowing around in this thing, to come up with those flow rates, we essentially used data from the water system, basically figuring if we know how much gallon of usage individual properties have on a certain time frame in terms of water usage, we can kind of extrapolate from there what their wastewater usage would be. Makes sense, right? Water flows in, it has to go somewhere. So the system that was designed in the preliminary engineering utilized that calculation framework to come up with flow rates. We had a meeting last week with folks from the state, and long and short of it was they basically said that they don't concur with those calculations and how we did it. And so we went back and forth with a bunch of like, if this, then what, and what are our options here? And we don't have a 100% clear answer on that yet. One potential thing the state might do is say, we can provisionally approve that system design with the caveat that after it's created, we're going to monitor it for 2 years or 3 years. And if we come back and say your flow rates are higher than you projected, we would require you to install some additional level of treatment. The idea here being that if we stay below a certain threshold of flow through the system, we don't have to create a higher level of treatment capacity, which would add cost to the construction of the system. The idea is to be as efficient as possible, allowing for that growth we want, but staying at that level where we don't have to do some sort of large treatment facility. And you can think about that as like the big, treatment systems that you think about, but in some cases, all it would be is like another level of black box underground filtration prior to it going out into the disposal areas, which are basically like big leach fields. So the engineers are working on some scenarios there in terms of, what our alternatives are to be most cost effective and cover our ass and get us to that finish line we need. So I don't have an answer to that one, but that conversation is happening right now with the state and the engineers. One thing that could really trip us up would be, we have this 5-year window to use the USDA rural development funds. and we're still in like year 1.5, I think. So like, we've got time. Problem is that if we do this construction of a system and then they come back and they say, we want a 3-year monitoring window before we might require you to go back out and do something additional, that would start to put us outside of this 5-year window of use of funds, meaning that anything done there could not be tacked on to the current funding framework we've got now. So it's overcomplicated things. It'd be better if they'd come back and said, yeah, we love you guys, you're great, go for it, but they didn't. So we're going back to the drawing board a little bit there to figure out what alternatives we can do to, again, keep on budget, get the system to work the way we need it to. The other update here is about funding. So we currently have this capital stack of funds for the project that go all the way back to the engineering planning advance dollars we've used to do preliminary engineering, to the loan subsidies that we've gotten to continue to advance that work, all of this being no risk capital, right? If the project doesn't go forward, we don't pay it back. The other stuff would not be paid back anyway. Those are basically just subsidies that we're using. And then we've got the USDA Rural Development Grant Loan Package. We've got the $500,000 from NBRC. So we have this capital stack we're working on. And as we've gone through this over the past couple months, more than a couple of months, trying to figure out how to get the final cost of this system down to a place where we don't need to have an impact on the municipal tax rate, which the voters basically said no to, right, at that bond vote. I'm sorry, not the bond vote, a town meeting and the reconsideration vote. So we need to get it down to where there's no dedicated impact on the tax rate. We need to get the user fees down to that, you know, percentage of mean household income that make the project affordable, right? If it's costing people $1,000, you know, a month to be on this system, it's not affordable. And so if we can get it down to like 1% or below of mean household income, that's what we're targeting. So we've had probably like hundreds of hours of conversations with different funding agencies and people at the state about, you know, if we took this and used it this way and put this way and refinanced things this way. And we're getting very close to, I think, figuring this out. One thing that has tripped us up some is the NBRC funds have a max percentage of federal fund usage to them, so that if we use them, more than a certain percentage of overall project costs can't come from the feds. And right now we're about 10% over that cap, which means that if we're going to use the NBRC funds, we have to essentially pull everything back out with them, redo the entire project budget, siloed in a way where the funds would go towards something very specific of the project. It basically becomes very, very, very complicated in how we would use those funds. We don't want to give away or give back $500,000 because it's $500,000, but it's become very complicated as to how we'd employ them in the project. The other kind of weird thing out here is this congressionally designated spending request we put in through the congressional offices, which has since passed the committee it needs to go through, but it needs to get attached to a appropriations bill in order to get through Congress. So that's $2.9 million that is waiting for a funding vehicle to have it attached to and pass through Congress. If anybody's been paying attention to Congress lately, especially within the last 24 hours, I think they're all ready to kill each other down there. So I have no idea where any of that stands. So we have this wild card of NBRC and this wild card of the congressionally designated spending funds to make the project whole, right? If all the problems went away with those today and they said yes, we would have a fully baked project budget and we'd be good to go with all the parameters we've put on it. So in the meantime, ARPA showed up and ARPA kicked in and ARPA started throwing literally millions and billions of dollars at the states to do certain things. One of those things was wastewater. We've been in conversations with folks at DEC around how they're looking to employ those funds, and there's timing things there where DEC wants to get those funds out the door as soon as possible, right? They want to show that they're executing on them, using them, they are employing them the way they want to be employed. So DEC is sitting on this large stack of ARPA funding that has to go to community wastewater projects. Everybody following me so far, right? So DEC is now looking at us and saying, you are one of two towns in the state that is basically has a project that's ready to go, other than the fact that you haven't gotten your capital stack figured out to a way that you can achieve affordability. So what has worked through with some folks at DEC, and this is provisional, is a potential framework whereby they come in and they cover all of the congressionally designated spending requests, 2.9 million. They cover the $500,000 from NBRC, and they throw a little bit more money at it to fix some other gap, and then basically that makes the project whole. If we ended up getting the CDS monies, those would come in and we'd give back that amount of money to the state from ARPA. But essentially, it would mean that we wouldn't have to wait on the CDS request. We could potentially walk away from NBRC in a way that makes sense, and we'd have a fully baked project budget ready to go. That flow rate thing I mentioned is still a wild card there because that could change the budget. But essentially, we have a framework that could work very much to our favor. We don't have that as a green light yet. It is still a proposal. My understanding, though, in talking to enough people at the state and the feds, is that enough of them have told me that, like, have you gotten a phone call yet? Have you gotten a phone call yet? You know, the kind of like, I don't know what they know, but I don't know it yet. So knock on wood or whatever, but I'm optimistic that the state might come through here if it passes through the governor's office, and we might be able to essentially get all this stuff together. I'm hoping they're waiting until like Christmas so they can call on like Wednesday and be like, hey, it's Phil Scott, ho, ho, ho. So I don't know. I will let folks know as soon as I know that. But that would be an opportunity to basically get the overall project budget baked in a way where we would be able to say confidently we're comfortable moving forward to this next phase and that we've got the money to do this. The other wild card here would be that if we walked away from the NBRC funding, I emailed them today to ask this, but potentially if they let us, we might be able to take the NBRC funds from the wastewater side and shove them over to the streetscape side of the ledger. Remember that whole part of the project? We have that USDA loan in place still, but the idea there is we want to get additional funds to basically minimize the debt at the end of the day on that one. So if they say yes, we could potentially move $500,000 to that project and start really kind of dropping that down. So that's like a lot of really complex stuff. I mean, I've spent like a few hundred hours talking about this in the past few months, and I still don't quite fully understand all of it. But that's the update on the wastewater end of things. So essentially, we're in a holding pattern until we know what's going to come out of the governor's office on the ARPA money and some additional clarity on the NBRC funds. But that's where we're at.
Charlie, how is the money coming out of the state through the DEC? They're classified. I know that it originates as ARPA funds, but does it come through as federal funds or is it coming through as state funds? And then does that have like a potential impact on still working with that $500,000?
Yeah.
If it's not classified as federal money.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And the general framework here is that it's both, right? So depending on how the state frames this and how they tag the funds, it's either federal funds that came from the feds for the use of this and went out the door, or in some cases, DEC through the state Clean Water Revolving Fund. What they do sometimes is they have federal money come into that and they then punch it out to a project, and then when that money comes back in, that is now recycled funding, which is not federal funding, it's state funding. So it doesn't carry that hitch label of federal funds. So that is one of the that is one of the things trying to work out, but that is on the radar.
So we don't yet, sorry, I'm interrupting. So we don't yet know how that money coming out of DC is going to be classified. If this funding framework that they're proposing comes through, I think the majority of those funds, if not all of them, would be classified as federal funds. But if we dropped NBRC the way they're framing it, we wouldn't be subject to some of the same requirements. Like different programs have different requirements. But the
the point you're getting at is a great one, and it's one that we're aware of, and we're trying to navigate that with our friends at DEC.
Thank you.
So that's the update there. Like I said, I'm really hoping that by the end of this week, we have some more information on what our opportunities are here. And as soon as I hear about that, I'll let everybody know. Cool.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it would mean like it's taken a lot of work to get this stuff together and all the moving parts, but it's looking like, yeah, there might be a light at the end of the tunnel. That's not a train heading for us. So, awesome. Well, if anybody has other questions that come up or whatever else, by all means, shoot me a note or whatever, but I'll provide updates as I get them. So municipal website updates. So at our last meeting, Emily volunteered to kind of take the reins on this one and work with Liz and Aaron to kind of start getting a laundry list of amendments to the website together and reach out to Zach on kind of like what he might be able to do. So Emily, is there an update you want to share on kind of where that conversation stands?
Yeah, I met with Liz and Genevieve, and there's definitely like a long wish list to make the town website more accessible, not just on the like user end, but also on the back end as well. There's a lot of complexities to it that we talked about at our meeting. I'm following up on a few other things, so I'm not ready to give a full update. I thought that I would be, that I would have more of the information that I wanted to sort of put out there. There's still a few things that I'm following up on before reaching out to Zach to see sort of what's happening on that end and what the most efficient way is going to be to make changes and manage this website going forward. I think that the key point that came out of my meeting with Liz and Genevieve is just that there seem to be a lot of redundancies and a lot of inefficiencies on the presentation of the website and how the website's being handled at this point in time. So I'm sort of running some of those things down, and I'm going to follow up further on those, probably not until after the first of the year. And then by mid-January, I'll definitely have a more firm update and hopefully some sort of fleshed out proposal to bring to the board.
Awesome. Well, thanks for, working on that with Liz and Genevieve, and we will put a pin in that and we'll get back to it in January.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to hopefully be able to take the lead on this project, Charlie, sort of take something off of your overflowing plate so that we can bring to the community something that's really a usable interface, because at this point that is not what we've got.
Yep. Cool. Well, we'll look forward to it. All right. Last item under old business, and this is one where we've discussed it. I'm not sure where it landed or what happened or where things are at, but at a meeting however long ago, the topic was brought up around getting some signage on School Road around kind of share the road stuff that just basically says like there's kids and bikers and stuff. And I know that we discussed it, and I thought we'd kind of said, yeah, we're going to order some stuff, but I think maybe we said it and then we might have just kind of like forgotten about it once we, left the meeting. So Mark, is that something that we can order for the road there? If we send you some specs for a sign, not specs, but like an example of the signage we're talking about?
Yeah, that's something we can do.
Yeah.
I mean, really, the kids aren't really in the road going up the hill much. It's more up by the school. I mean, they really aren't. The school drive is, well, I guess the kids go up and down with bikes and stuff. So yeah, it probably would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Put me there. Yeah, just send me whatever you want to do.
Yeah, and let me just for kicks, let me so can folks see that?
Oh, okay.
Can folks see that sign?
Yes.
Yeah, so it was something like that, basically, just to remind folks that there might be kids or walkers or bikers on the road. So we can email you a copy of that, Mark, or something. And I'm sure if you look in the book of signage that our vendors have, there's something in there we can.
Yeah, we can find something. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll talk to Liz. I think she's got that book. So yeah.
Okay, great.
Fine. Yeah.
Cool.
Mark, once those signs get ordered, I can definitely hook up with you to touch base about where they might be best served based on the trails that the mountain bike club was working on and where people are popping in and popping out like off of trails, so that it, you know, just as a safety piece.
Yeah, I know they're coming out above the guardrails and then by the water plant there, by the water building, I think. Those two areas. Yeah. Crossing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the one goes in.
Great. So that's it for old business. Anything else under old business anyone's got before we move on to new business? All right, not hearing anything else under old business. First item here under new business, and maybe this could have gone under old business too, because this is another thing that was old, but we never acted on it. So the health officer stipend. Back when we passed the FY21 budget, the FY21 budget included in it, as passed by the budget committee and approved by the select board, an increase in the health officer stipend from $150 to $300. The budget passed, but this board never formally voted to increase that stipend, which we need to do if we're going to increase it. You know, I think if folks have been paying attention to all the work our health officer has been doing over the past 6 months, and the stuff that she's been dealing with this past weekend and the past week, you know, I think 300 is still basically just not even close to what she's worth and what she's put up with. But yeah, if we're going to actually enact the budgetary changes that we approved, we need to formally, you know, move to increase the health officer stipend from $150 to $300. So if there's a motion on the table, I'll entertain it.
I'll make the motion to increase the health officer's stipend from 150 to 300.
Awesome.
Though I think it should be more.
Yeah, well, we're going to be back in the budget stuff soon, so we can revisit this again if we want, but for now, we can at least ratify what we passed.
All right, for now then, my proposal is to increase it to 300, but I would like to discuss it further.
Yep.
During budget season.
Great.
I'll second that.
Whoops, awesome. Thanks, Suzanne. So we have a motion made by Emily, seconded by Suzanne. The discussion is that we might want to revisit this again. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of increasing the health officer stipend from 150 to 300, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, motion carries. Thank you. Next item under new business is Town Meeting 2022. Woo! So a few things here. First thing is just like, it's that time of year again. Budget tasking letters are going to go out next week to all the departments. The budget committee will start meeting in January. And then we need to start thinking about getting our ducks in a row to make sure that we don't miss any dates around the requirements for warning certain things or posting certain things or doing everything we need to do. I have a timeline that I've created with Liz. It's our annual town meeting calendar with all the dates that we have to have things done by. So that's in place. Wild card this year is that apparently we didn't get rid of COVID, and the legislature is primed to pass a bill as soon as they reconvene, which would give municipalities the ability to move everything to Australian ballot, similar to what we did last year. It's not a requirement. You know, we are not in a state of emergency like we were last year. This would be a bill that would basically provide the authority to move to Australian ballot, wouldn't require it. You know, one of the challenges here is that if they pass that when they get in there in January and then we have to act on it, it creates quite an accelerated timeline, in that a lot of the things that we need to do if we're going Australian ballot need to happen faster to meet certain posting and publication requirements, not to mention getting ballots printed and envelopes together and all that kind of stuff. You know, for the public record of the recording, this would have been a lot nicer if the legislature could have done this back when they met on the municipal mask mandate thing, like a month or two ago. Would have given towns a lot more time to potentially act on it instead of waiting until they came back, you know, in January. So we don't have to act on this tonight. I wanted to put it out there and kind of gauge people's thoughts on it. If we do want to go this route, we will have to act on it on our first meeting in January, I think. I kind of worked things backward, and in order to like not light our hair on fire with being behind schedule, that first meeting in January is probably when we would have to, you know, make that decision. But I'll open the floor up. If there's any questions or comments anybody has on this or feelings, by all means. I can mute if you want to come off, just so you know.
Well, from the looks of things, it sounds like we're going to be COVID-id forever. So I would say I would entertain the thought of going Australian ballot again, because we won't be able to have hundreds of people in that town range. Town hall.
She said town hall, not Grange. You misheard that. Other thoughts?
I would concur with what Leanne had to say. I would also like to add that while I love town meeting and people coming together and hearing the discussion and seeing people respectfully, you know, agree and disagree and opinions change and people learn from one another, I also really appreciate the fact that some people have to work that day. And by going to Australian ballot, it offers everybody the same opportunity to have a say in the happenings of town for the next year. I do think that there is, you know, some real, like, socioeconomic stuff at play when some town people can take the day off, some can't. Some people have the day off schedule. So I do think that it equalizes the playing field to allow everyone to participate if they want to.
Yep. So just one thing I do want to say in this conversation is that I think Emily raises a really great point. I'll just add that what we're considering now would not solve that. And so if that's a discussion we want to have, then we're going to have to get basically the question on the town meeting ballot as to whether or not we want to stop being a floor town and go to Australian ballot for everything forever. So again, I think Emily's got great points. I just think that that kind of triggers a much broader conversation than, what we do in 2022. Any other thoughts or feelings at this point? Again, we're not voting on it tonight.
I wonder if maybe we can look at the participation rate for if we decide to go to Australian ballot again for this coming town meeting, the 2022 meeting, looking at the participation rates in 21 and 22 to see what they were compared to, I guess, loosely what they were maybe the previous couple of years, to see if we had more or less participation.
Yeah. Yeah, we certainly can. I know that in the past, when the town's done this, because the town has at one point, outside of a pandemic, done the Australian ballot, and then they decided to go back to a floor meeting because participation wasn't higher. The wild card here on participation is that without a more robust data set, it's hard to say whether it's participation or whether it was the fact that ATVs were on the, you know what I mean? Like it's, one year to another, it'd be hard to say. Anyone else have?
I mean, not particularly at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
Everybody's kind of brought up all the big points
Yep.
that I have.
Yeah. Okay. Well, again, we don't have to make a decision on this tonight. I just wanted to kind of set the table for that conversation to occur at our next meeting. I will just say that if we do go to Australian ballot, it means a lot of additional work for Genevieve and Liz. A lot of work that has to happen quickly, moving through January, that they have to do. And this would also mean that they have to then run 2 separate elections next year, which take a lot of time and are frankly a pain in the ass for them. Not that democracy is not a wonderful thing, but I do know that I think if we asked them, they would probably say that they would prefer not to do that. But there are just logistical things we have to figure out as far as, getting things done, all of the ducks in a row and things lined up. Okay, so that's kind of.
Charlie, sorry. If the legislature votes to move in that direction to give towns that opportunity, and that is the way that we choose to go, obviously there's additional funding requirements in order to do the Australian ballot as opposed to hosting a floor meetings. Is there funding available at the state level to defray those costs?
I don't know. We'll have to see what comes through the legislation as passed. I know that's a perennial thing with the legislature. It's like, if you're going to have us do something, help us pay for it. I just don't.
There was last year, right?
When they did it last year, there was additional funding for certain things. I don't know exactly how much of that trickled down to certain specifics, like whether or not they paid for all the ballots. I don't know.
Wasn't last year's town meeting later? Didn't it end up being later as well?
Last year, we just did everything by Australian ballot.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Wasn't the vote postponed, or was it also?
I think it was still on town meeting day. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was.
Okay. So the other thing around town meeting day, and this is something that we do have to decide on tonight, is this is like tied in with the wastewater conversation. So the last year at town meeting, there were 3 questions on the ballot related to the wastewater system. There was a vote to establish a reserve fund for revenues generated for the purpose of the project. There was the municipal tax rate question, and there was the local option tax question. The account and the local option tax questions passed. The tax rate question didn't. The thing with the local option tax is that as the legislation, the law currently stands now, Montgomery cannot unilaterally institute a local option tax. Only certain towns or cities in the state can, and it's predicated on like a budget status on a date that happened a long time ago. I don't understand why it's this way. It doesn't make any sense to me. But essentially, Montgomery, like the majority of towns in the state, cannot institute a local option tax unless one of two things happens. One is that the legislature passes a bill which allows all municipalities to institute a local option tax. There's been a bill in the legislature for quite a while. There's one sitting in Senate Finance right now that would do just that. My understanding, though, is that the chairwoman of it's either House Ways and Means or Senate Finance basically does not want that bill to pass, and therefore it will not pass. I don't know why, but that's stalled. The other way that a town could legally institute a local option tax without legislation passing broadly, allowing everybody to, would be to pass a charter change which allows the community to institute a local option tax. So if Montgomery wants to institute a local option tax in order to generate the revenues associated with debt service on the wastewater system bond, the final amount we end up indebtedness for, we would need to pass a charter change which says that we can do that. I don't have that language handy right now. I was hoping to have that kind of together for tonight to talk about and review. It doesn't have to be something crazy. It can be, I think, as something as simple as a couple pages that just say, you know, whereas the voters of Montgomery, blah, 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 blah. Once the town passes that, then it would go to the legislature, and the legislature would have to vote to allow municipalities, would have to vote to allow Montgomery to do this. It's another example of the legislature, at least in my opinion, you know, not allowing for local control over things that we should have local control over, but that's another discussion. So in order to, the long and short of it is, in order to institute a local option tax, such as what was passed at town meeting last year, at this year's town meeting, we would have to pass a charter change which allows the town to do that. The reason I bring this up tonight is because in order to do a charter change like that, we need to warn a specific hearing about that charter change. And the last day to warn that hearing is the last day of this month. And we're not going to be meeting between now and that date. So what I want to float tonight is whether the board will essentially vote to set a charter amendment hearing for January 24th. The last day to have that hearing is January 30th, which is a Sunday. The preceding Monday is the 24th. So it would be a Monday evening. It'd be the fourth Monday in January. Doesn't have to be the 24th. We could do it on the 25th, 26th, 27th, and 28th. But since we tend to operate on Mondays, we could do it on the 24th. Between now and then, we would get all the language together. So we'd have the charter change out for review and discussion and everything. The key tonight is to warn the hearing so that we can get it warned by the end of the month so that we don't get jammed up later by somebody saying, hey, you didn't warn that hearing in time and therefore you can't do this. Does that all make sense to people? Mm-hmm. Other examples of charter changes in the news the past few years would be like the city of Barry saying that non-citizens can vote in local elections, right? So things that a town want to do differently that require changes like that. So if there's no further discussion on this or whatever, what I would move is that the board warn a hearing on a proposed charter amendment for Monday, January 24th.
second that motion.
Great. We have a second from Suzanne. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing no further discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, motion carries. Thanks. I mean, this is kind of a wonky, thing. You know, the town approved it last year, but in order to, actually institute it, we need to do another step. And so this would cover that step. With that, overweight truck permits, we have none. Liquor licenses, we have none. We also don't have any warrants to sign here tonight, just as an aside. Erin, I think she had kind of a sore throat today and just out of an abundance of caution did not want to come into the office just in case anything. I think she's taken at least one test and she's negative for COVID and everything, but she didn't want to risk it. So she's going to come in, tomorrow, Wednesday, get the warrants together. So keep an eye on your email or your text messages, and she's going to basically do a drive-by warrant signing with people. So stay tuned for that. And that brings us through the end of our agenda, unless anybody has any other business to be discussed before the board tonight. Hearing no other screaming issues, a motion to adjourn is always in order.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion from Suzanne. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second from Leanne. Great. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. We will adjourn the meeting at 7:45.